What's bigger than a cereal box and packs a supersized serving of comic book origin stories, super showdowns, and iconic story arcs? Treasury Editions. And right now, I'm on the hunt for a few examples of these great treasures from my childhood. Let's go behind the panel on the awesomeness of Treasury Editions. For those of you not old enough to remember a time before basic cable or the interwebs, Treasuries were oversized comic book anthologies in the 1970s, printed tabloid style. Compiling the greatest hits issues of a particular property, they were an effective gateway drug into comics. I've got my eye on some of these Treasury Editions you have here, two in particular, the Incredible Hulk and the Superman Bicentennial issue.
This one right here, and let me grab the other one, please.
Look at this, look at that cover. Jeff Ackland did this, amazing artwork. One of the iconic Superman images from the Golden Age. Oh, amazing. Mark, what's the price for these two?
I think we can do about 10 bucks a piece on them, man.
Steal! I'm out to score the very first Treasury I ever remember buying as a kid. Now, we're off to find the Wizard. That's right, the Wizard of Oz adaptation. Do you guys have the Wizard of Oz Treasury?
Not right now. I get those sometimes, but not right now.
Nostalgic obsessions can be so random, it's hard to explain why a particular comic book or toy becomes a mile marker in our memory and brings back the joys of childhood. Oversized comics date back to the early days of the medium, but the Treasury Age of comics really began in 1972 with the publication of the stories of an iconic, misunderstood young hero. No, not Spider-Man. Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. The Rudolph Treasury was a classic. DC published the limited collector's edition of Rudolph, and within a year released another Treasury-sized book featuring Shazam. Marvel, never one to let a good idea go uncopied, released its first oversized anthology starring Spider-Man in 1974. The image on the cover to Spectacular Spider-Man #1 by John Romita Sr. is very likely the most seen Spidey image in history. What made the Treasuries great for fans was their accessibility. It was a cost-effective entry point for new readers to discover early adventures of heroes like Spidey and the Hulk. The Treasury format was also used for two of the most important comics projects of the decade. The first was 1976's groundbreaking first Marvel DC crossover, Superman vs. the Amazing Spider-Man. Ah, look at this. The Treasury book right here, Superman vs. the Amazing Spider-Man. One of the most important books of the 1970s, by the way. Just ask John Byrne.
That was an amazing time. Even as professionals, we were all blown away by the fact that this was in the works and it was coming. First crossover between Marvel and DC.
And it was a team effort right between a litany of great artists to do this.
Well, I don't know if you know the story, but it was penciled by Ross Andru, it was inked by Dick Giordano. Terry Austin inked the backgrounds, but Neil Adams re-penciled all the Superman figures. Inside Ross Andru's silhouette, he re-penciled all the Superman figures. It was all done, for free because they wanted this to be the best book ever. In those days, it was.
The success of that book led to another team-up matching the Man of Steel with the greatest of all time. Oh, little history lesson, kids. This, quite possibly the most beautifully drawn comic book ever. Superman vs. Muhammad Ali, an absolute classic. Neil Adams and Dick Giordano at their creative peak. And correct me if I'm wrong, sir, but this is probably the most in demand of the Treasury books, right?
It is. Of all the Treasuries that came out in the mid-70s, the Superman Ali is the highest demand and has the highest value also.
Superman versus Muhammad Ali may sound absurd, but you have to realize that Ali was the most famous man on the planet at that time. I mean, there's famous, and then there's Muhammad Ali in the 1970s, famous. This was a big deal. The resulting story, essentially involving invading aliens and a story twist that 7-year-old me did not see coming. Other memorable Treasury books that I'll never forget from my childhood included the Star Wars Comics Edition, Battlestar Galactica, Tales from the Crypt, Justice League, and of course my personal favorite, The Wizard of Oz, which I'm not having much luck finding. I'm trying to find a certain Treasury Edition comic, The Wizard of Oz adaptation. Do you have it?
You came to the exact right place. I have exactly what you need, and whatever you need, I have it. I'm pretty sure I can find it for you. I have a big selection, as you can see.
You do have a lot of them.
I got
Superman, Wonder Woman.
I read that when I was a little boy.
You got Tarzan and Howard the Duck, but you don't have The Wizard of Oz?
You know what? That book is going to turn up.
He's got more.
He's always hiding the good stuff. 2001, can you imagine, by Jack Kirby?
Interlude here. One of the great standalone stories ever. Kirby's artwork in this is the bomb.
Who told you that there was a Wizard of Oz?
You did!
I said that!
You know, just for that, You're gonna have to sell me that Jack Kirby 2001 Treasury at a good price. Maybe it has to do with rising costs or the fact that collectors struggle to keep them in near mint condition, but Treasuries sadly died out in the early 1980s. You know, it's one thing that the eBay generation doesn't really understand. It's the thrill of the hunt. Trying to find that one comic you just gotta have. You know, it's easy to do it online, pressing a few buttons. It's something else entirely to come to a convention and dig through long boxes trying to find it. That takes character. Oh, yes. This is it. The one I've been looking for. This is the very first Treasury comic I ever owned. I've always been a huge Wizard of Oz fan, like just about everyone else, but I remember seeing this at some store when I was a little kid, and I was like, I've got to have that. And I can't believe I'm holding a really nice condition copy in my hands right now. This is awesome. Okay, sir, let's make a deal. How much do you want for this?
Oh, in that condition, probably $35 will work.
Done.
Cool.
I'm not even gonna haggle with
Do
you.
it. We'll write it up. Thank you.
Could these oversized beauties make a comeback? I say, why not? Publishers have experimented with lush, larger formats recently, like with DC's new Black Label imprint. These almost Treasury-sized comics look great and are a proper showcase for top-shelf storytellers like Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermejo.
I started the book out traditional. I mean, the first 18 pages were done traditional size. The moment I decided to actually expand those pages and do them in the new size, I immediately took to it. It was just, everything felt like you fell into the story more. Widescreen scenes got really widescreen. It really added something to the book that I don't think would have been there. Especially, I recently looked back at the original pages on the original size, and you know, the new format definitely brings something else to the storytelling.
I think the big relief for us was when we went to the graphic novel size, the larger format. There was a lot of skepticism from retailers and internal. Some of the folks saying you couldn't sell that format anymore. That's not what they want. People just want traditional size comics. And for me, I think the art always sells a comic. The art's strong and big, it brings people in and makes them want to buy it. And being able to put on a page where the artist really brings these books to life and expands on the artwork, I think makes the book so immersive and just so visually stunning that I think they're selling better than even we expected.
And just a few years ago, Marvel put out modern Treasury editions featuring the Women of Marvel, Spider-Man, and the new Guardians of the Galaxy. Personally, I'd love to see this trend continue. The Treasury format was always meant to be something different, something special. The point isn't to reach the same fans who already buy comics. Publishers should be using them to reach the fans who love the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies and the DC television series, but need a way into the original source material. Do you remember the Treasury editions? What's your favorite? Hit us up in the comments and hit that subscribe button for more videos about your favorite comic book memories and creators. And don't forget, Behind the Panel is much more than just a video series. We have a weekly column at SYFYWIRE.com as well as an audio documentary series. Listen and subscribe to Behind the Panel wherever you get your podcasts.